That's okay. Hello and welcome to the Beauty Inside Out podcast. We are a sister platform to Ask Us Beauty magazine. I am your host, Kellie Galvin, and my goal is to connect you with real experts in the field of beauty, wellness, advanced products, and technology. We encourage these experts to spill the tea on what really has efficacy within their specialty. So turn up the volume and listen up because today my guest is the one and only Dr. Beverly Pedroche. We call her Dr. Beverly. She is one of the Ask Us Beauty contributors, and you'll have to check out our latest issue as of today. Today's the 29th of July, and it just was released. So go to askusbeautymagazine.com and look at Dr. Beverly's article. It really is super helpful. And it's some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So Dr. Beverly is really, she's committed to helping women. I mean, that's really her focus. And she'll talk more about that in a little bit. But people who are really struggling to realize and embrace their self-awesomeness. And I love this. This is on her website. Due to depression or anxiety, low self-confidence, a negative self-talk, people pleasing, lack of assertiveness, or patterns of poor decision making or indecision. She also specializes in helping older adults cope with the psychological impact of issues related to aging. So welcome, Dr. Beverly.
Thank you, Kellie, for having me. I need to listen to that every day because it just that felt good hearing it from somebody else.
It really is. And you, I take it, wrote it yourself. It's so appropriate to everybody because you sometimes, I mean, some of the subjects that I wanted to talk to you about today, really have everything to do with just being emotionally aware and knowing what your boundaries are. And I believe your article, I loved it. It's really about, setting your boundaries and just being, you'll have to go read it. It's online right now. It's just, I don't want to, spill the beans on it before, it have people have a chance to read through it. But, the emotional awareness, what do you feel like? Do you think there's a lot of people out there that just don't even know what their feelings are? I mean, it kind of reminds me of when you're a little kid and somebody showing the kids in the classroom, like, what does this face mean? And it might be an angry face, right? So it's really, now we're breaking it down for all the adults in the room. How do you realize your emotional awareness? And that is like you're lacking of the emotional awareness, and when it's becoming, problematic.
So let me start by saying that I use that FACES, we call it the FACES sheet.
The FACES, okay.
In adult psychotherapy, okay?
Oh, okay.
And it's actually really helpful. So I would say that one way to recognize that you lack emotional awareness is, and I got two stories here, is when you find yourself answering the question when somebody asks you, how are you? And you've got like a vocabulary of 3 words, Yes. And I think we all get in that rut where someone says, how are you? And it's good, fine, okay, we've got like a handful of words.
Yeah.
If that is truly the extent of how you can describe how you're feeling, that it's good or bad, it's fine or then you might lack emotional awareness.
Oh my God, I might not lack emotional awareness.
You're in the right place, Kellie. You're in the right place. I can help you.
I'm so glad we did this today because yesterday somebody said to me, I'm like, hey, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. And he said, I'm living the dream.
Me?
And I thought, I love this guy. He's in a little like a drive-through gas station grocery store, right?
And he's living the dream.
He's living the dream. He goes, I got AC. That's all I need.
See?
So I love that because he made me laugh, He made me laugh and stuff. I'm fine. How are you? Great.
Right. And it told you a lot more about who he is. This is somebody who apparently, is grateful. He has a gratitude practice, and he's enthusiastic, and he's likely an optimist. And so, I never even from that one line, that's what I gather from that person. That's why emotional awareness is important, is because it's so take a step back, emotional awareness is the ability to recognize not just our emotions, but the emotions of others.
Yeah.
And that's important because of interpersonal relationships.
Mhm.
And so it's the more specific you can get when it comes to emotion, describing using your words, emotions, the better indicator of mental health. And so, um, fine really doesn't tell me anything. And it's usually BS, it's just a go to
It
response.
could be just a canned, like, I don't really want to talk to you.
Yeah,
So,
it could be. It
yeah,
could be.
I get that if you're just walking by somebody on the street. But I mean, if it's your family and your friends and your coworkers, and they're like, so how's everything going?
Yes.
And you say, fine. That's when you know that there might be, especially if it's a dull fine, that there might be a little bit of an issue there. That how do you kind of walk into somebody's world without being too,
Exactly.
aggressive or too
Yeah.
nosy, but just to let people know that you care. And so there's these people out there that they don't know their emotional awareness, and so you start with the faces.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was only for kids, but I'm really happy to hear that, it's adults too, because
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder, some of the people that I talk to, if they even know, or am I just really good at kind of containing myself, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that my patience is really run out, but I still have a smile on my face.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's times that you need to do that. And then other times as you get older, I think, maybe with me, especially, I've kind of learned to express myself with the kind way, instead of just to let the tea kettle go.
Yes. Yes.
And
Exactly.
that's just been trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And then the really, wanting to communicate, and not just to avoid a confrontation, but really wanting to
Mm.
communicate. So
Yes.
so what is the best way for somebody, if they know, what are I should say, what are the signs when somebody is really emotionally, closed off, and they know it, and they
Mm.
don't, what are some of the easy steps that they can take to
Sure.
actually open that up? Because we've gone through 3 years of anything like we've ever experienced in any of our lives, and there's people that have bottled things up,
Yes.
and they don't really know what to do with that energy. And they
Mm-hmm.
might be, they might have bad habits, they might have, maybe withdrawn within themselves or become
Sure.
really depressed. So tools, what's in the toolbox
Mhm.
for them to get started?
Well, I think that the first step is to increase your self-awareness, your emotional awareness and your self-awareness. And so sometimes people truly don't know what they're feeling. So there's the lack of the vocabulary or the lack of effort to describe it. And then there's what am I feeling? And so a lot of times with people, I'll say, tell me what's going on physically. I literally have patients say, yeah, I don't know, I'm fine. Well, tell me what's going on physically. And so, I know for me, if I'm feeling anxious, I feel that in my chest. I feel like
Yes.
a
Yeah.
tightness or a flutter in my chest. Um, if I'm feeling sad, I feel literally a physical heaviness.
Hmm.
If I'm feeling angry, I tend to like clench my jaw.
Yeah.
And so, what is going on physically? That can tell us, that can at least lead us in a direction. Oh, I'm having this, my heart's, beating really fast. Okay, so that's not happiness. I mean, I guess it could be excitement, but, my heart's beating really fast and my hands are sweaty and I feel hot.
Yeah.
And so that leads me into a direction of, anxiety, fear, trepidation. And so I'll ask people, what's going on physically? So a lot of people who don't have the vocabulary to describe their emotions, they do have the ability to do a body scan and say
Yeah.
what's going on physically.
Hmm.
That's a great first step. So if you don't want to go to that feeling stuff, that stuff is a little scary and vulnerable.
Oh,
Um,
really? Yeah. Could you?
Tell me what's going on physically. And so, and that's a great first step to be able to identify the word to go with the emotion. And then when you define or identify what the emotion is, then we can work on what to do with it, what
Okay.
to do with it.
Yeah.
So a lot of, it's like people come to me and in therapy and they're like, oh, I feel anxious. Okay, well, what's the problem that we need to solve? But first, we need to identify the feeling. Is it even a problem? Is it even a problem?
Yes.
So that's how I a lot of times I'll start with what's the physical sensations.
Okay.
And a lot of our relaxation techniques that we teach people address the physical sensations that then will calm the mind. The deep
Mm.
breathing or the muscle relaxation. Those start with the physical, and then you find that the mental stuff relaxes too.
Okay, tell me more about that. So I'm guessing it's like being mindful and being quiet and
Sure.
breathing. Is that correct?
Yes, that
Okay.
is correct. So, if you watch a baby breathe, babies breathe right. You
You,
watch them lay down, like watch a little cute naked baby breathe, and their belly goes up, and their belly goes down, and their belly goes up, and their belly goes down. So when I teach people, it's called diaphragmatic breathing. I'll tell them, put your hands here,
in your belly.
and let's see. So anxious breathing is up here. It's hyperventilating. It's up here high in the chest, and that's anxious breathing. Where calm, diaphragmatic, relaxed breathing is lower down. And so that's one technique is diaphragmatic breathing. Another one is progressive muscle relaxation. And you start down at your toes and go all the way up to the top of your head and just like thinking about scanning your body and relaxing each muscle. And that's another tool. And these are tools for anxiety, insomnia, anger, tension, stress. So you see how you learn these tools and you can generalize them to multiple problems.
Yes. I just love listening to you because you just bring up such common sense points and your voice is so soothing and you're so kind. And I can say this because I've been working for you with you for the last almost year or over a year,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I just love your work and I think that we really want to spread the word and it might be something that you start with on your own, right? Just give yourself, you owe it to yourself to take the time to just start with you. Start with
Mm-hmm.
you. And then maybe another step is when you start to get a little control over your breathing and you know that that helps you and you get into a place where you're open to talk to somebody about some of the issues. And I think that comes down to, how do you find your person? you
Mm-hmm.
know there's a Rolodex of really helpful psychologists out there, but how do you find the one that's right for you? What are
Yes.
some of the questions that you would advise people to ask in
Mm-hmm.
regards to finding the right person, their person, to
Yes.
help them get through some of their anxiety, their anger, their maybe physical, maybe things have manifested physical now? What are
Yeah.
some of the questions that they should ask their potential, and where should they
Mm-hmm.
go?
Yes. No, that's an awesome question. And, I would say don't be afraid to interview people. I've had the same, we were just talking about this before we started recording. I've had the same hair guy for over a decade. And I didn't start with him. I tried several people along the way until I got to him. And there are things about him that I like a lot. Like he listens to me, but he makes gentle suggestions. And when he's blow drying, he's just quiet and he lets me take a nap. And these are the things that I like. And so the first thing I would say is go out with the intention of interviewing therapists. Know
Hmm.
that the first person that you meet may not be the person for you. I am not the person for everybody who contacts me. My style doesn't work for everybody. And so some of the questions that I would tell people to ask is, one, like how interactive is your type of therapy? Like
Hmm.
I like a therapist who isn't just a listener, but who's fairly interactive.
Yeah.
I have on my website, I tell people on our first calls, look, I'm a great listener. I'm still growing on my listening skills, but I'm definitely above average listener. But I'm not afraid to call you out on your bullshit.
Yeah.
Some people don't want that.
They
Some people don't want that, and
don't
that's
want somebody.
okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. That means that I'm not for you, but maybe I can help you find somebody. And so, how interactive is your style? Um, Going back, just some practical stuff. What's your schedule like? Oh, you only work 9 to 5? Well, I need somebody after hours.
Sure.
What insurances do you accept? What is your rate? So there's the practical stuff. Then there's the personality stuff. The most important part as far as efficacy of psychotherapy is actually not the techniques, not the stuff we learned in school, but the relationship. If you can't trust me, if you don't believe that I am competent enough to help you, this isn't going to work. It's not going to be helpful.
I'm so glad that you said that. Do you mind if I interject something?
Sure.
So, I've had my share of going to therapists, and I think every time it's been a learning experience, even if it hasn't been a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes if I'm asking questions, this was years ago, years and years ago, and I've asked questions because I'm a big question person. My mother
Mm-hmm.
used to tell me, all right, time out, no more questions. But I ask a lot of questions. And so I remember this one therapy session where I'm asking questions, and the answer was basically, let's make this is about you.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah. And then I got a lot of paraphrasing, I
Mm-hmm.
would say something and they would just repeat it back to me and then go and then nod their head. And I know that you do cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think that, I'm not bashing other types of therapy, but while we're on the subject of questions to ask, maybe you can just talk about that a minute just to let
Sure.
people know that this is a way that you're empowering your patients,
Yes.
giving them homework. You're
Yeah.
calling them out on their, like you said, they're bullshit.
Yeah.
Don't try to convince me that, this is your responsibility. And that's a really good point when you're going to therapy is that just because you're paying somebody to give you, feedback and advice, you got to take it. There's the homework that goes with it.
That's it.
You know,
Yeah. The
there,
majority of the work does not happen in your 45 or 60-minute therapy session. It's all those other hours in between sessions where you have to implement these skills. And so, taking a step back, there's obviously the therapist personality and skill set, but as a consumer, as somebody who's shopping for a therapist, I encourage everybody before you go online, before you pick up that telephone, what do you want to get out of therapy? That's probably the most important question to ask yourself. Do you just want, not just, but are you looking for somebody um, to to vent, to talk to, who's not going to judge you, to be a sounding board? That's okay. If that's what you need and you find that to be therapeutic and beneficial, that's okay. That's what you want to ask when you call. If you want coping skills to manage stress, that's what you need. Hey, do you help people develop coping skills to manage stress? If you notice that you're struggling with depression, is this really a disorder, and what can I do about it? So you need to have an idea before you go online, before you do your Google search or pick up the phone, what is it that you are seeking from therapy? That will help you narrow down your pool of therapists significantly.
yes,
So I
absolutely.
practice cognitive behavioral therapy. It's there's old school psychoanalysis, and psychoanalysis is not so interactive. It's not the therapist listens and the patient speaks, and so some of that is free association, looking into dreams, that sort of thing. Cognitive behavioral therapy is much more present focused and solution focused,
Yes.
and so the benefit of that is that you can go and say, look, here's the problem. I'm struggling with work-related stress and I get really anxious about the future. What can I do to manage that? And you will get some tools and techniques to practice. Oh, let's do some cognitive reframing or muscle relaxation and that sort of thing. I have to admit that while I am technique savvy, um, therapy shouldn't just be about a book of techniques. You can buy that at Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah. If
It's
you wanted,
also,
yeah.
yeah, it's a combination of here's some tools. It's a combination of calling somebody else. It's a combination of validation. That does sound really hard. Now, all of us need to hear that sometimes. Yeah, that life is hard. You
Yeah.
know,
And
it's
just
no one
sometimes,
thing.
yeah, sometimes just talking about it like the old school way, you
Yeah.
may have talked to nobody about this problem or
Yes.
problems, right? And then they come out and you're listening to the spoken word of yourself
Yes.
and somebody else is validating you. That's just a start.
Yep.
So all of this is great advice. And I think that, you know, you mentioned something cognitive validation. Is that
Mhm.
what it was, or cognitive reframing? That's what it was.
Yes,
So
reframing.
reframing is when you're really, instead of looking at it one way, you look at it another way.
Yes.
Is it exactly right? Okay.
That is exactly right. I am the queen of cognitive reframing. That's
Ah,
my queen. In my personal life and my professional life. And so cognitive reframing is not about being, it's not about toxic positivity. It's not about being a Pollyanna. It's taking the exact situation and just looking at it another way,
mhm.
and so it's, wow, it's, oh my gosh, it's so hot here in Florida. It's just miserably hot and humid. And my reframe is, I'd rather be hot than shoveling snow, you know?
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
grateful that I'm not shoveling snow. I'm grateful that I get to wear sleeveless and I don't have to wear layers and scarves and all of that. Same exact situation. Here's another way to look at it. And that other way should be much more supportive of good mental health rather than, wah wah.
Right. What is it? How does the saying go? It's like you can't sometimes you can't change a situation, but you can always change the
100%.
way you think about it. So I
Absolutely.
think that this is all such great advice. And we're gonna um, put this out there so everyone can hear it. I think we need to do another podcast, if you would so let me, because I think communication is a podcast in and of itself.
Mhm.
Learning how
Mhm.
to communicate um, skillfully. And there's nothing wrong with saying how you feel. Delivery there's a lot to delivery, right? So
Yes.
please stay tuned to our next podcast. We'll try to schedule this when we can grab Beverly again. And I just so thank you for joining me today. This is just so informative. And I look forward to our next podcast on how to communicate effectively and healthy.
Awesome. I look forward to it, Kelly.
Thanks so much for joining me today.